Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to share with you guys all of my eyeshadow palettes. Recently I did a reorganized makeup collection video. I'll link that in the description box down below. And a few of you commented on how many palettes that I have and your desire to see what ones I have. So that's what we're gonna do today. I did see Kelly Gooch do this video and I so enjoyed her version of this. So this really was inspired by her video. I will link hers down in the description box down below. I'm sure she's not the first person to do it, but it was the person that sort of inspired me to do this for you guys. So let's dive into the palettes. So we'll start with a couple of small ones. I've got two palettes from TG, also known as Bedhead. These are quads, so I have their Love Affair quad, which is very sort of natural. There's this beautiful like peachy transition tone and the rest are like brown and like champagne colors. Love this one. It's a great everyday little quad. These perform very well and nobody talks about TG anymore, but once upon a time they were like one of the it brands, at least where I live, but they've kind of fallen off a little bit. And I also have their Lush quad, which is one that I wear more in the summertime. You've got the beautiful teal and that sort of pinky tone with that sort of matte brown and flesh color there. Beautiful little quads. These perform very well. I think I have two more of these at the salon that I keep there. One's like a smoky eye version and one's got like shimmering bronze colors with like a pop of purple. Anyways, beautiful palettes, great quality. And then the other quad that I have is a MAC one. So this is a self-made palette. These are actually my wedding colors. I don't have my big lighting on because I find when I put the ring lights on, it reflects off of the plastic on the palette, so hopefully you guys can see these a little bit more true to color. I'm just sitting in front of a window, so I hope that's going to work well. But these were my wedding colors, so I will keep this forever and ever because it has sentimental value, but I do still use it. I can't remember the names of any of them, except I know this one here is nylon. That's the only one I know. I could pull them out and tell you, but I'm scared to drive a fingernail into it, so I won't, but I love my little MAC quad. Okay, hopefully you guys are going to tell me the next time I have lipstick on my teeth. Appreciate it. Okay, so now this one here is in my Shop My Stash for winter. This is the Smoky Collection from Pure Cosmetics. Looks like this. Lots of cool tones in here. This is definitely a winter palette. I use it a lot more in the winter time. It's not my absolute favorite palette, but I'm trying to get a little bit more creative with it. Since it's in my Shop My Stash, I have been using it a fair bit. Then I have the Laura Lee Los Angeles Party Animal palette. This one was slightly damaged when I got it, so that yellow is a little bit crumbly. I don't use this a ton. This is one of those palettes that I keep in my collection because it is a rainbow palette, and I am a working makeup artist. I do like to keep some things like this in my collection, even though these aren't colors that I reach for all the time, because I do sometimes have occasion where I need something like this, and these do perform very well. I have used it on myself from time to time. However, it is so vibrant, it's a little bit intimidating to look at. Like I said, I can see the value in a palette like this in my collection, and it's small. There's only 6 colors. It doesn't take up a lot of space, so I do keep it on hand. I keep these two palettes for that same reason. These are embarrassingly old. Once upon a time, in the small province in Canada where I live, we used to have a trade show called the ABA, and it was the highlight of the trade show to pick up one of these palettes, one of these 88 color palettes. I have 2 of them. I used to have 6. I have narrowed it down to 2. These are the 2 sort of that were in the best shape of the 6 that I had, and I keep them in my collection for the same reason as I mentioned. With the Laura Lee Party Animal palette, I do see some value in keeping some rainbow palettes in my collection. I do makeup for prom, weddings, things like that, but I also sometimes do makeup for like photo shoots or fitness competitions, and sometimes we have to match an eyeshadow to a very specific garment or something like that. So there are times when these palettes come in really handy. I don't use them on myself hardly ever, but if there is a color that I need, I know that I can find it in one of these palettes. And they do perform surprisingly well. And then I have this Sassy Siennas palette from Dose of Colors. I received this in a BoxyCharm. Looks like this. It is a beautiful warm toned matte palette. These shadows perform so beautifully. I think I mentioned in that video that I would have liked to have received a different color selection. They have quite a few of these, so I wouldn't mind picking up a different color selection because I do already have a lot of these warm tones. But this is one of those little palettes where if I'm in a rush and I don't have a lot of time for blending or screwing around, this is one that I know that I can reach for because it just works. It's a very easy formula to work with. Next I have my Norvina palette. This was a recent purchase. I bought this just this year. I basically bought this for myself for my birthday. I was so excited about it. I waited, I had it in my shopping cart for like a year on Sephora. I hummed and hawed about it, and then I finally broke down and I bought it for myself. And then I used it twice and then I dropped it. So that's why it looks like that. It was very devastating. I haven't used it since I dropped it because I'm just still sad. I just need a little more time to wait on that. But it is a beautiful palette. It performs beautifully. The colors are very unique to my collection. That's why I did decide to pick up this one and not a different Anastasia palette. This is my only Anastasia palette. It is beautiful. The shimmers perform so beautifully. They're very loosely pressed, which is why you don't want to drop these palettes. But I do really love it. It is very unique to my collection. How many times am I going to get lipstick on my teeth? I don't know. That's 2. Next, I have my only Morphe palette that I own. This is the 15N Nightmaster palette. This is actually what I have on my eyes today. This is also in my Shop My Stash for winter. It does feel very much like a wintry palette to me because of all the dark neutrals and these sort of plum colors across the top there. I will say that the shimmers in this palette are not worth using. So I don't use them at all. I just use the mattes, but it is a mostly matte palette. There's I think 4 shimmers / metallics in here, and I just don't use them. If I want to add some metallic to a look that I'm using with this, I just grab something out of another palette and tap it over top, which is what I did today. But the mattes in here perform fine. I'm not a huge Morphe fan. They're a pretty problematic brand. However, I was excited to receive this because I hadn't tried any Morphe eyeshadows before, and I'd heard so many sort of mixed reviews. Some people are like, oh my gosh, they're the best eyeshadows ever. And other people are like, oh, they're the worst eyeshadows ever. I sort of land somewhere in between. They're okay. I think if you're just starting out, this formula is probably very easy to work with. It's not super pigmented, so it's pretty easy to blend out, but I do prefer something with a little bit more pigmentation. However, it is a nice palette to have, especially paired with this one that's in my Shop My Stash, because this doesn't have hardly any mattes in it, and this one's mostly matte. So I do enjoy the Morphe palette. Okay, and then I have this Alomar palette. This is their Volume 1 palette. This is a very summery palette, and it's so beautiful. I believe I got this in my very first BoxyCharm, and it is such a beautiful palette. This is one, if I do like a summer Shop My Stash, this would definitely be in there. These metallics are stunning. This green right here is such an interesting shade. I use that quite a bit over the summer. These two are like a little bit more typical to find in a summery palette, but this one here is so unique. The mattes blend out beautifully. They're incredibly pigmented. It's just a beautiful palette. I would love to try more from this brand. And then I have the Dominique Cosmetics Celestial Thunder palette. I also received this in BoxyCharm, I want to say 2 months ago, 3 months ago, can't remember. Recently, have I used it? Not a lot. I don't know if it just feels like more of a summery palette to me, or what it is about these 6 colors together. I don't know. I'm a little uninspired. I love all the colors individually, but when I look at them laid out in the palette together, I just don't know what to do. So I'm hoping that as the weather gets nicer, like maybe spring, summer, I'll feel a little bit more inspired by this palette. But the formula is beautiful. The colors are beautiful. I think I'm just not in the right season for this right now, but it is a beautiful palette, and I haven't tried anything yet from Dominique Cosmetics that I don't like. So I am happy to have this in my collection. Some palettes just, they haven't had their season yet, you know? Then I have the Milani Gilded Desires palette. This is a favorite of mine. I received this actually from one of my subscribers, bless her heart. She sent this to me and I love it. It's really hard to show you guys because of the gold packaging. It just wants to reflect. But I have actually hit pan on these two colors. I use this a lot. These highlighters in here are stunning. It's a good winter fall palette. It's got some deep tones, some nice neutrals. It's really hard to show you guys, but the quality of this is amazing. I would like to try some other palettes from Milani to see if they're all as good as this one is, but this one is very impressive. The shimmers are outstanding. The mattes are easy to blend. It's very, very pigmented, very easy to use. I love it. I love it a lot. I mean, this whole video is just like a rave review from me, but I own them. So obviously I like all of these palettes or I wouldn't have them. You guys know I do declutters all the time. So the next one is the Butter London Natural Goddess palette. It looks like this. This is a really nice spring palette in my opinion. These two colors on the end are mattes. Everything else in here is like a metallic or a shimmer. I would have preferred to have a third matte color, like a transition color in here, but that's just me, and it's not like I don't have something else that I can pull in. But it is a beautiful little palette, nice and compact, easy to use, easy to blend, very easy to wear colors, and it's so cute and little. I love it. This is the Suva Beauty Protégé palette. Looks like this. I'm trying really hard not to blind you guys with the mirrors and all of the palettes. So this is this palette here. So this one is a bit of an interesting layout. So you've got sort of a set of warm colors here, and then a highlighter to go with it. And then you've got a set of cool colors down here and a highlighter to go with that. So it's kind of an interesting palette. There is a little bit of wasted space. I would have liked to have a little bit more transition colors in there. However, the metallics in here are so pretty. Like I can't swatch every palette for you guys, obviously, but look at that. Like, that is stunning. That's like the main reason I've kept this palette in my collection for so long, because the metallics in here are just, ugh. The next palette I have to show you guys is by Crown Pro. This palette doesn't have a name. It just says Crown Pro on the front and absolutely nothing on the back. So I'm sure there was something on the box once upon a time and I threw the box away. But this is a really nice, everyday, natural, warm tones. Again, there's that gold on the edges, so it's hard to show you guys. But very easy to wear, easy to blend, easy to work with. This is a good, like, everyday, if you're just like a natural, neutral kind of girl, this would be a great palette for you. Very easy to work with. This may actually be the first palette I got in a BoxyCharm. Maybe I got the Alomar one after this. I can't remember, but I really like this one. I haven't reached for it a ton just because I have a lot of palettes. You're probably seeing that now and feeling weird about it. Me too. But I am trying to rotate my palettes a little bit more. Another reason why I'm doing a seasonal Shop My Stash instead of a monthly Shop My Stash. So I will get around to using this one again soon. Every time I reach for it, I'm always like, oh yeah, it's so easy. Next, I have the Pretty Vulgar Nightingale palette. This is a great smoky eye palette. It's very cool toned. You've got a couple of little like highlight type colors here, a natural kind of transition color, and then all kind of smoky. So you can do like a brown smoky eye, you can do a gray smoky eye, you can do one that's a little bit of both. If I'm doing makeup for a photo shoot or an event or something like that, quite often what people want is a smoky eye. So I always bring this palette with me when I'm doing something like that, because I know it's got everything that I need regardless of the skin tone, because you've got different finishes in there. You've got mattes, metallics, grays, browns, and some sort of taupes that are almost in between, which is sometimes more complementary to somebody like me who's quite fair. So beautiful palette, performs very well. Next up, I've got the Pure Festival palette. This is also a very summery palette to me. I use this one a lot in the summertime. I have also used this a lot on clients when I've brought palettes with me to do makeup for various reasons. It just performs very well. It's very easy to work with. I mean, you've got these two pops of color in the middle and the pressed glitters on the side, but without those, like these sort of neutral tones that are around the outside are so easy to work with, so pigmented. It smells like cupcakes or something. It smells beautiful. This is a great palette in the summer. I love to do sort of these natural kind of colors with like a bright pink lip, or do like a coppery eye with a little bit of this pink underneath, smoked out on like the lower lash line, something like that. This palette is one of my favorites. Then I've got from Storybook Cosmetics the Little Briar Rose palette. I received this in the December Boxy Luxe. Turn it around so the mirror doesn't blind you. I haven't used it a ton, but when I have used it, I've been very impressed by the quality of this. The colors are very much in my wheelhouse, especially for like winter time. I love this so much. I've done some really cool looks with these blues here. Very high quality eyeshadows. The packaging is bulky, but it's just so beautiful and it looks like a storybook, and I just love it so much. If I had a different type of beauty room, this is the type of palette that I would have out like on display, because I just think it's so beautiful. It just brings me joy to look at it. And then there's the Tati Beauty Textured Neutrals Volume 1 palette. I did splurge and treat myself to this palette. I love it so much. Looks like this. I've used this a ton. You wouldn't know to look at it, but I have used this a ton. I love the way that this is set up in color families in rows rather than have it a little bit more sporadic. I'm a little bit OCD. That is very satisfying to me. I find that very easy to manage in terms of what type of a look I want to create with this. The metallics are subtle, so they're great daytime like work eyeshadows, you know. I mean, you can deepen everything up with these darker tones, but if you stick in these two rows here, especially for my skin tone, very easy everyday looks that you can create with this. The pressed glitters are the best pressed glitters I've ever used. Even though pressed glitters are not my favorite thing in the world, if I was going to reach for some pressed glitters in my collection, these are the ones that I would reach for. But the 3 rows along the bottom alone, to me, are worth it. I can't wait to see, I know that she just put out that like blendable poof thing, but I can't wait to see what else she comes out with in terms of eyeshadow palettes. Then we get into palettes where I own more than one from each brand. So diving into Smashbox, I have one of their Cover Shop palettes. This is their Ablaze palette. This is sort of a dupe for the Naked Heat. It's got those nice warm tones, a couple little pops of those like cherry colors, but mostly these sort of warm tones. I actually used to have the Urban Decay Naked Heat, and I decluttered it and kept this instead because I wasn't using it a ton, and this is sort of a compact version. I quite like this. I don't use it a lot. It is small, so it kind of gets lost in my collection, but I am thinking that this is one I might take down south with me this year. Very small, very easy, petite little thing. And then also from Smashbox, I have the Double Exposure palette. This is also in my winter Shop My Stash. When I first got this palette, I thought it was the best thing ever. I didn't have a ton of eyeshadows back then. I had a lot more like singles and those big 88 color palettes. So this is just a really great sort of staple palette. You've got some navies, you've got some purples, and then you've got the more natural colors down on that end. Again, very easy to work with. Smashbox eyeshadows are not my favorite, but I think the colors that I've got in here are very complementary to my skin tone. And then I've got a couple of palettes from Ace Beaute. So this is their Grandiose palette. I got this in a BoxyCharm as well. It's a very warm toned palette. I wear this one a lot more in the summertime, but they do perform well. The metallics in this one perform better than the metallics in the one I'm going to show you next. But I think this color here, it's called Clove, is such an interesting like peachy color. it's just so cool to have something like that to use with these pinks as a transition color rather than just another pink. And then the other palette that I have by Ace Beaute is the Scarlet Dusk palette, and I just got this in last month's BoxyCharm. There you go. I was trying not to reflect it on you. So there's a sort of a similar color story going on, but a lot more options. So there's definitely more transition colors in this one. However, I do find the metallics in this one, they're not that great. So I like the metallics in this. I think there's more transitions in this. If I could merge these two palettes together and just have one, that would be ideal. But I keep them both for different reasons. And I do think the quality of Ace Beaute is good. It just seems to be very hit or miss in terms of eyeshadow formulas. I have a couple of their single shadows that I really like. I use them all the time. But I find it interesting that the metallics perform so differently in these two palettes. Usually with a company, if you like their mattes, you like their mattes. If you like their metallics, you like their metallics. But they seem to have a different formula from palette to palette from what I've seen so far. Then we get into Violet Voss. So I'm just gonna say right here and now that Violet Voss makes some of my favorite eyeshadow formulas. This is the Essentials palette. I received this in a BoxyCharm. There's a theme here. A lot of my palettes I got in BoxyCharms. This is the Essentials palette. Love this so much. I use this a lot. This Dusty Rose color is such a great transition color for me in my skin tone. I know a lot of people, when they received this in their box, was like, oh great, another colorful palette. But if you cover up the green, the pink, and the orange, I mean, it's not that colorful. Really, if you cover up the green, it's not that colorful of a palette, really and truly. This one here is showing up a lot more purple on camera, but in person, it's more similar to this kind of plum color I've got on my eyes. So I am planning to do a video at some point on like how to make a palette like this, how to create a neutral eye look out of a palette like this. Let me know in the comments below if you're interested in that, but that's one that has been requested. But I love this eyeshadow palette. The colors perform beautifully. It's very easy to work with. Violet Voss shadows are one of those ones. Again, if I'm in a rush, I don't have a lot of time, I can't be screwing around, this is a formula that I know I can reach for and it won't let me down. Also from them, this is in my top 2 eyeshadow palettes. I'll tell you the other one that's in I have like 2 absolute favorite eyeshadow palettes in my entire collection. I'll share those with you at the end, but spoiler alert, this is one of them. This is the Violet Voss Pro Holy Grail palette. Love this so much. If I am doing prom, bridal, anything like that where people are gonna go for a more natural look, this is the palette I bring. This palette never lets me down. It performs beautifully. You've got some warm tones over here. You've got more cool tones up here. You've got everything in between. Anything that you could need to create a cohesive eye look, you have in this palette. They perform beautifully. I just can't say enough good about this palette. It's amazing. If you're somebody who's looking for like a large, more natural colored eyeshadow palette, I highly recommend this one. It's very, very good. I've got a couple of e.l.f. eyeshadow palettes. The first one is the Mad for Mattes in Nude Mood. This one was actually decluttered to me by a friend. She's like, I hate it. It doesn't work that well. I love this for a very specific purpose. So I like to use these. I pretty much don't use any of these darker ones. I just use these ones towards this side. I use them as transition colors when there isn't one in a palette. They're a little bit dusty, so they really blend nicely over top of a shadow that doesn't blend that easily. So if I'm having a hard time blending out an eyeshadow, I reach into this little e.l.f. palette. I grab one of these first like 4 or 5 colors on a big fluffy crease brush and I just start swirling it around and it solves my problem every time. So this has a very specific value to me in my collection. If you were looking at this and thought, yes, this is all I need for eyeshadows, no. This is not all you need for eyeshadows, but it does serve that purpose for me very, very well. The other e.l.f. eyeshadow palette I have is the Opposites Attract palette. This was the first palette that they put out in this specific format. They have quite a few now. This is the only one that I have. I was really excited when they put this out. I actually ordered it right off their website. I think now I could purchase their palettes like this at Walmart. But at the time, you could only get it on their website. So I will say that it's sort of split half and a half. So on this side, you've got all your cool tones, and on this side, you've got your more warm tones. I will say that the warm tones perform better than the cool tones, but that's typical to a lot of eyeshadow formulas. However, these are very easy to work with. Some of these are a little bit fussier, but these ones here are very easy to work with. Very good sort of everyday colors. I love this sort of mustard color, is so unique. And some of these peachy colors are really interesting. So it is a great palette. I think it was like $15. It wasn't very expensive. Now let's jump into some Urban Decay palettes. This one I don't know why I still have. This is the Beauty with an Edge eyeshadow palette. I received this for Christmas from a client a few years ago. You can see that I've almost completely used it up. There was a lip gloss in here, I think. Was it a lip gloss? No, I think it was a eyeliner. There was an eyeliner in here, which I still have and I still use. Actually, it's in my project pan. But this palette here, I really keep it for this specific color. It's a really interesting metallic sort of taupe, like really deep taupe color. It's not gray, it's not brown, it's somewhere in the middle, and I just don't have anything else in my collection like that, which is such a foolish reason to keep this whole thing for one eyeshadow. But I'm a foolish human being. I don't know what to tell you. The next palette I have from Urban Decay is their Naked Ultimate Basics palette. This was also gifted to me. This is just a palette full of mattes. It's just a bunch of matte neutral eyeshadows. So this is a nice sort of tool to have in my repertoire as well. If you need a matte, it's in this palette, really and truly. Anything that you could need for a matte eyeshadow is in here. And it pairs really nicely with the other Urban Decay palette that I have, which is the, what is this called? Heavy Metals palette, which is an all metallics palette. There's a mirror in the middle, so I'm going to cover that up and try not to blind you. So this is their, can I tilt it? I hope that's not too bright. So this is the Heavy Metals palette. This was a holiday release from a few years ago. So on this side, you've got all these sort of bright, cool toned jewel tones. And over here, you've got the more neutral, warm tone colors. There are no mattes in this palette. It's metallics only. So if I'm looking for a metallic shadow to complement a certain look, I know that I can reach into this palette. If I'm looking for a matte eyeshadow to complement a certain look, I know that I can reach into this palette. There is eyeshadow all over my hands. And then lastly, I've got some ColorPop palettes. So this is the Dream Street palette. This was a collab with Kathleen Lights. This was sent to me by a subscriber as well. So sweet of her to send this to me. This was actually the first ColorPop palette I ever tried, or first of their eyeshadow formula period that I've ever tried. I love this palette. This is a great palette to travel with. This has everything you need. You've got a couple of transition colors. If you're my skin tone, you've got a couple pops of color here with the sort of teals and that coral color. You've got some nice light highlighting shades here. You've got some metallics for the lid. You've got everything you need in this little palette, and they perform beautifully. ColorPop shadows are some of my favorites in terms of formula. I would say ColorPop and Violet Voss are like my absolute fave eyeshadow formulas. Just easy to work with, high performing, high quality, great price point. Love this palette so much. And then last but not least, my other favorite eyeshadow palette. Again, it's a Kathleen Lights collab with ColorPop. Kathleen Lights does a great job with her collabs with ColorPop, and I love her as a creator. I just think she's so cute and bubbly. But this is the So Jaded palette. I treated myself to this in the fall. I bought this with my own money. I love this so much. If I had to pick one eyeshadow palette, if I could only keep one, this would be it. I could create anything and everything that you could ever think of out of this palette. I love it so much. It's so beautiful. You've got such a nice variety of colors. It pushes me out of my comfort zone and pushes me to be creative with some of these more colorful colors, but you've also got your sort of staple, sort of transition type colors, deeper neutrals. You've got these nice sort of highlighty shades, a good blending color. Like, you've got everything that you need in this palette to create anything that you want. So definitely my top two favorite palettes are these. They're very different, but I love them. I love them for the same reason. These are the two palettes that I know will never let me down. These are just my absolute two favorite palettes. I love all of my palettes. I love them all. They all have a special place in my heart, but these are the two, these are my top two. I just love them so much. So those are all of my eyeshadow palettes. You've seen them all. Let me know in the comments if you have any of the same ones that I have, if there's any specific palettes that you'd like to see me use in a get ready with me. And also let me know in the comments down below if you'd like to see this style of video done with a different category. For example, like lipsticks and stuff like that. If you find this interesting, I could certainly do more. Leave me some comments down below. Let me know what you think. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, hit the thumbs up button. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.